welcome to today's edition of Win TV. How are you?
I'm doing very well, Denise. Happy New Year to you, and just very glad to be here as always.
Thank you, thank you. I mean, and we're talking about the last segment was talking about college students, and I know right now, as an educator, a writer, and now an author, you are concerned about those kids who are trying to make their way beyond middle school and high school, and that are being impacted, by this pandemic. Tell us, I mean, what do you see happening next week? First of all, when schools come back, what are you writing about, and what are some of your concerns?
No problem. As far as next week, I think a lot of what's going to happen depends on uh, the rate at which parents and children get their rapid test results. But regardless of however that looks, people should expect long lines. They should expect a long wait time in terms of getting results, and schools individually determining whether or not they will close after the 5th. As we saw with the mayor and Chancellor Farabee's announcement last week or earlier this week, the decision to close is going to be up to each individual school in consultation with the DCPS central office. And that depends on the results of rapid COVID antigen tests that will be submitted on December 4th. So between the 3rd and the 4th, teachers and students will be required to submit their test, and then those results will determine whether or not each individual school will open or not. And that's often dependent on the amount of teachers that will be present, given whether or not they test positive for the test. For COVID. But even with that, there's a lot of concern about whether or not, with everything being online these days and uploading tests, there's concern that the site will crash, and even how soon they can turn around results and data.
I always want to think positively about, outcomes, particularly as it relates to, our children, and that the adults know what they're doing, and that, everything's going to be fine, and kids can really focus on learning and having fun. But we know that that doesn't always work that way. And so you're saying that as opposed to having a system-wide, well, the system-wide policy is going to be a school-based policy. In essence, if students end up at a particular school that has a high incidence of infections, then that school or that principal can, in consultation with the, I guess, the chancellor's office or the superintendent, can say we need to close.
Exactly. That's
Okay.
exactly what's going to happen. Overall, the chancellor and DC Mayor Bowser remain committed to keeping schools open and remaining in-person learning, just as has been the case before winter break. Individual schools, depending on their situation, consult with DCPS. And there's a test to enter policy that is system-wide in DCPS. As far as the charter schools, they consult with State Superintendent Dr. Christina Grant. And as far as test to enter, it's not across the board for each charter school, but there are specific charter schools that will test students before they enter the building.
So parents will be required to make sure that their students have been tested 2 days before. So in essence, they should be getting their students tested by Monday.
By Monday, but from what I was told during the press conference, they want test results from the 4th. So teachers are the ones in DCPS who report on the 3rd. You can report on the 3rd or the 4th, but from my understanding, the most valid rapid antigen test is the one that is uploaded on the 4th. That they consider that a better indicator of whether students are good to go.
And does it matter? Do you know what tests that they take? Do they have to go to a testing center? Is it the 15-minute, like you said, rapid test, or the one that you have to send in? Does it matter what test you take?
Very good question. It does not matter. You can take the at-home test. You can go into a building. You can even go to one of the many clinics across the district that are conducting tests. as long as you upload the results either by PDF or by photo.
And we know, at least we've heard, and we don't know much of anything. We're all operating off of what we've heard. But we've heard that, you can test today and be negative and end up with COVID tomorrow. So, are the students, if a student has not been tested, will the school itself provide tests for those students?
My understanding, again, is that students who report to school who have not been tested, they can conduct the test then and there in order to enter the building. As
Okay.
far as the rapid tests, being hesitant about speaking about personal experience, rapid tests can turn out negative, but the PCR tests, the results of which come back 2 to 3 days later, can end up positive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's also been a concern among parents and teachers, just given the fact that a lot of people have received false negatives over the winter break. And then once they test again or they get the results back from the actual lab, it's in fact that they tested positive for COVID.
So have you had an opportunity, Sam, to talk to any parents or any teachers who are expressing their feelings one way or the other about this process and about the reopening of schools after the holidays?
Definitely, definitely. In terms of teachers, there's a petition going around right now calling for a system-wide pivot to virtual learning. And teachers who are calling for virtual learning, they're not doing it. They're doing it with the understanding. Let's back up first. So there's a debate about which way is more beneficial to students. Teachers who are calling for virtual learning, they are doing so even though virtual learning has been more stressful for them. Teaching students virtually, having a lot of these boxes cut off, you can't see their faces, oftentimes, and there might be, bad internet connections has been very stressful. Even with that, teachers want to pivot to virtual out of concern for their safety and that of students. And there are parents who feel the same way. At the very same time, there are parents who are concerned about being able to take off from work if in fact their kids do have to quarantine and learn virtually. So when it comes to parents, it can go either way, but the main concern is about how can parents best accommodate their students who have to learn virtually. And that's always been a topic of discussion throughout the whole pandemic, balancing those obligations.
So, because I do want to talk a little bit about your book, even though we're getting to a longer conversation a little later. But are you aware, and we should have something that we can post now, if parents or have questions or need to reach out, what would you suggest that they, what email, what phone number? Do you have any information where parents can go to get additional information before school starts?
Another important question, Denise, and you are the OG. You always ask very good questions. I appreciate that. Parents whose children attend DC public schools, there is a Reopen Strong website that has been updated. If you ask whoever, the degree to which it's been updated is debatable, but at the very same time, you do get up-to-date information as it relates to DC public schools. If you want to get information related to your individual school, whether you are charter or public charter, whether you are public or public charter, you should always report to the school administrators. That has always been the first line of defense in terms of getting information. So I'll say it once again. For DC public school students and families, report to the Reopen Strong website or to your individual schools for information. For public charter school students and parents, report to your individual charter schools.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we're trying to put something up. I don't know what's going on with the screen right now, but yeah, we're going to try to put something up. I think that's great information. And we want to make sure that parents are equipped with that information. And also, Sam, I mean, people are going to have some experiences that may, they may have someone that they need to talk to. I don't think we're trying to do Dream in Black, but we're seeing that again. How can they reach you, Sam, if folks have some stories that they may want to share about education, their educational experiences?
Definitely. My email address is scollins@washingtoninformer.com. SCOLLINS@washingtoninformer.com. I'm also very active on social media, on Twitter and Instagram. You can catch me at Sam PK Collins, and on Facebook, Sam PK Collins Writer. Or you can just type in my byline and the page will show up. As I said, I'm very active on social media, so I will reply and get to you.
Okay, well, we're doing a great plug for AT&T Dreaming Black right now. We haven't gotten any of that information, but I think, oh, there we go. Okay, thank you, Sherry. We're good. We're good. And I want to ask just one last. Oh, well, no, let me go talk about the book now.
Man, that's a beautiful book.
Of course, it doesn't mean you're not saying that because it has your name at the bottom. But tell us, I mean, this book was just released this week, correct?
Definitely.
Okay, talk about how this came about.
Man,
Babylon Be Still. First, talk about the title.
Oh, very good question. I encourage everybody to listen to Garnett Silk's Babylon Be Still. Going to get personal as I have in the book. I am of the Rastafari Livity, and Rastafari is well beyond what people talk about when they talk about Bob Marley and this and that. We are talking about going back to Africa spiritually, physically, and Rastafari, which is named after His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie, was an interpretation of the Bible, which was taken from us and misinterpreted. It's our interpretation of the Bible, and it's also our ode to the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, who also called for self-determination, who also called for independence of African people all across the world, and who called for identity with the African continent. So at a time when W.E.B. Du Bois and other leaders of the 20th century were more so fighting for integration and looking for other ways to accommodate with the system, Marcus Garvey inspired us to look our own way, to look within ourselves, and to unite as a united African people. So Babylon Be Still, in short, speaks to my metamorphosis as a journalist who attended the PWI and who navigated the journalism industry trying to find his voice. And oftentimes, you know, as a conscious brother living in DC, when you want to speak about gentrification, you want to speak about go-go music, you want to speak about issues near and dear to your heart, there are forces at hand that often discourage you from doing so. And if you're not strong internally, you will buck and you will fall. And I had to learn that. And I'm still here because I have that liberty, you know, and the book really speaks to that.
You said PWI. For those who most of us know what that means, but just describe that.
A PWI is a predominantly white institution. The PWI I attended was the George Washington University. I attended on a full ride. DC students, they can get to GW on what's called the Trachtenberg Scholarship. When I attended GW's campus, the Black population was 6%. The Black male population was 2%. The GW population that was from DC was even smaller. So a lot of GW students, they matriculate through the boarding schools. They come from California, Boston, Georgia, and they are often sons and daughters of business magnates and others like that. So I was in the belly of the beast for 7 years between undergrad and grad school.
And coming from what high school in DC?
Banneker Academic High School.
Woohoo! All right. Right. Well, you know, I look forward to reading the book. I'm glad that I got a copy. I can't wait to see you so you can at least autograph it for me. I hope that's
I will.
okay.
Yes, I will.
And we're going to get back together a little bit later on and talk more about this and some of the other ideas and concepts that I think fulfill or fit within the mission of why even the Washington Informer was started, and why we're so glad to have you with us, because you understand, you know, our mission, and, you know, it's sort of a perfect marriage there. So yeah, thank you so much. And I'm glad that education is, you know, particularly in your focal point. You know, we're going to be talking about Carter G. Woodson, some others, you know, as we move towards Black History Month, and just what parents can do on their own, you know, outside of the classroom, to make sure that their students are prepared for the world that's out there waiting to eat them up. so to
Exactly.
speak.
Yeah.
So, we want to make sure that they're strong and prepared for that. And we certainly are glad to have you with us to talk about that. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
I know on your flyer it says, we've overlooked the fact that we're still on our last day of Kwanzaa, next
Second
to
to
last
last.
day of Kwanzaa. And
Yeah.
so, again, Habari Gani to you.
Kuumba.
Yes, and tell folks what Kuumba stands for.
Kuumba stands for creativity.
Yes, and I mean, while this is more than creativity, but this is a good way to celebrate the day. So, thank you so much, and we will talk to you soon. And have a safe New Year's.
Same to you, Denise. Appreciate it.
All righty, take care.